Hi everybody, I'm Michael Brown from Montgomery College Television. I'm going to be your moderator today, and we're in the Gudelsky building on the Rockville campus of Montgomery College, and Dr. Pollard is really excited about hosting the second town hall in the year-long series. And listen, if you're close by, you're watching online, it's a beautiful day, come on over and join us. We've got some seats left, we'd love to have you. Now, my job today is to be Dr. Pollard's sidekick. And my main duty is to make sure that she stays focused on all of your questions. Now, if you're watching online, email those questions in right now to townhall@montgomerycollege.edu. And you online and everybody here can help us all out by keeping your questions brief. That way, hopefully, we can get to more of them. And regardless of whether you're here in the room or you're watching online, please identify yourself before you ask your question. So, without further ado, here's Dr. Pollard.
Well, hello and welcome everyone. I am delighted to have you here again for our October town hall meeting. What's really exciting about this is that almost all the seats are full. And I also, as I was leaving Manicare, heard a number of people saying that they were signing on. So I'm excited to have you here. Look forward to a fruitful conversation. Most importantly, looking forward to me being able to respond to your questions and the things that I don't know. Our intent is to make sure we get that information out to you later. There'll be a few people in the room from time to time since you're here. I may tap into you. But the other thing that's important is it's a dialogue. So I thank our online viewers, our face-to-face viewers, and it's on you, Scotty. Let's roll.
All right. I'm Scottie Pippen. She's Michael Jordan. And actually, Scotty has the first question.
All right.
All right. And this is something that's been on my mind. We know that you have tremendous demanding responsibilities here at the college, but what a lot of people may not know is that you also have a 5-year-old son at home who's just started school. So my question is, how do you balance a demanding work life with a demanding home life?
I don't do it very well, but I do it better in ebbs and flows. I think that's probably the nature of anybody who's a working parent with a young child. At the end of the day, I try to remember, I don't want on my tombstone, she was a phenomenal president. What I wanted to say, she was a delightful daughter, a dedicated friend, the best girlfriend, a phenomenal parent. And at the end of the day, that's really all that counts. So I try to keep that in perspective. So when I'm here, I try to have fun in my workplace. I try to be serious where it's appropriate. I don't take myself serious because when I get home, my family does not take me that serious. They are happy to have the parent. As a matter of fact, I was attending with several of our trustees last week, the American Community College Trustees Association meeting. And at that meeting, I was gone 3 or 4 days. I got home and we started a new practice with Miles where, because he's writing now in school, we're doing a gratitude journal. You know, that's my favorite thing. I do the writing for him right now, but his number one on Monday was that I'm glad that Mom was back home. So that's the beautiful part about it. At the end of the day, it's not about trying to do everything right, because it's inevitable that I will not.
There's a problem with your mic.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not going to repeat all that. Suffice it to say, I don't do it very well. I'm working on doing it better. And I think the other part about it is not to take myself or the job too seriously, to enjoy it, to stay grateful for the things we do well, to always try to be better. And at the end of the day, try to put some boundaries in place. So the real boss of me are 3 people. That would be Robin Jones, my love and my partner, my son, and my Ida, who is my executive assistant in my office. For the record, Ida, as I always tell you, she's the real boss. So I try to help her help me to the extent I can and try to balance that. But it's a constant struggle, and I think it's a struggle that any of us who have young children, particularly when you have a president that might call you at 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 8 o'clock at night when you're trying to put your kids to sleep. From time to time I have to do that. I'm looking at Sarah because I've done that to her a couple of times. So we try to manage it, but that's life, and hopefully you all will help me manage it, because we have to count on each other to do it. True? All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay, any questions in here before I go to online?
I know we got one because we already got a question, so let's get it out there. Let's get it done. Get it out there.
Hi, I'm Herb Winkler from the Montgomery College Green Club, and we're interested in sustainability. That's our mission here on campus, is community engagement, student engagement, and I was thinking about a rideshare program and wondered if you had any thoughts.
Well, I appreciate the question. That was not what I was expecting, but thank you. I wish that we, and as an organization, I think this is an issue that we consistently have to do a better job at. Since we have a huge footprint in this county, both in terms of our employees, but also in terms of our students. So the idea is, how do we become good stewards, both of the resources that the county gives us, but also the resources that the earth gives us, and how we can give back and help sustain. So one is that we have to start having a lot of conversations about that. And I was very excited that the Green crew, you all had a video that you put together that we showed at opening meeting. I know that you all are trying to figure out where you fit in the governance structure, because as I try to say, let's not have all these ancillary groups that hang out. How do we bring everything into governance? Because that is a part of the decision making of the organization. It's part of the way in which we help ourselves figure out what's the best way to do things and how we institutionalize it. So I'm very excited about that. The ride share, I think, is really huge. And I was just talking to Kathy this morning briefly. I said, wouldn't it be wonderful if we actually had zip cars? Because it made me think about this. Sarah, you're my example today for everything. Sarah just moved, and she's commuting in with her husband to work. So she said, I have to remember I don't have a car all the time. And I turned to Kathy after she left. I said, this is why we need zip cars. Here's somebody who goes between campuses. We should have the ability for her to commute, since we don't have our own transportation system yet. Let's talk about that. So I think there's some really sophisticated ways that we can be looking at things, but also some simple ones. You know, I live in Clarksburg, and this morning I would have loved to have had somebody ride with me today, because it would have helped me stay calm as the traffic was occurring. So I think that there are ways in which we need to, but we have to get the conversation going and get more people engaged in that. And hopefully by your asking this question and me responding, more people will start to engage in the conversation. You're welcome.
Well, we got a natural follow-up to that online, and this is from Atul Roy. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. When should we expect our own shuttle service connecting our 3 campuses?
Atul, I love him so much. But he's just a very sweet man. But the other thing, I love the way that question is phrased. When can we expect versus is it happening? But when can we expect? You all know this is actually an issue that I have some passion about, because if we are truly going to be one campus, we need to have the ability to go between campuses. And we have a number of our students, the number is growing. I think the last number I saw is about 15% of our students attend classes on 2 or more campuses. And that number has grown steadily, and I think will continue to grow as we look at ways of being more efficient with resources. So I would love to see that. The other issue that is compounding this is that we have a significant commitment to ride on, and you have heard me talk about this already. The college, when we started the agreement 5 or 6, 7 years ago, was paying about $600,000 to ride on. This past year, we paid $1.2 million to ride on for the services that we provide there. The part that's interesting to me about that number is only going to go up. And is it as efficient in meeting the needs of our students and our employees based on the current construct? So I was just in a meeting this morning about this, thinking we have to do some serious investigation about this. What's the best strategy? I also think, to be quite frank, the idea of a bus service allows us to have branding within the community. I can think of nothing better than seeing some big purple, black, silver, or gray and white buses driving around Montgomery County talking about Montgomery College. So how we go about doing that would be lovely. We used to have a shuttle or some type of support service between that. It was cut for cost, but I do think that we have to look at that, particularly as it relates to the first question on sustainability and green. It is an issue.
Any questions in here before I go online?
Got a question?
All right, let me run over here.
Leanna's History Department, Rockville.
Hi.
And I just have a question. Colleagues for the last 10 years have been noticing a proliferation of administrators. Even one of my wiser colleagues says his one piece of advice to presidents for the last 10 years is, read my lips, no new administrators. Could you address the growth in Manatee? And I think some would wonder if we might hire one of our outstanding, more of our outstanding part-timers rather than create more administrative positions.
Thank you for that question. I would love to actually see the data on this, and I've pulled it a couple of places. Interestingly enough, Montgomery College has the lowest ratio of administrators to faculty and staff and students in the state of Maryland. For the size of our institution, we are the largest undergraduate institution in the state of Maryland. We have the most number of students enrolled, and we actually have the smallest number of administrators given the size of the organization. I think there is always, and supposed to be, a healthy tension between faculty and administrators. And every place I've worked, and when I was in the faculty, you wonder why you need so many administrators. One of the things that's interesting that we've done here at our organization, and this is something you see endemic across higher education, instead of hiring more administrators, we end up creating opportunities for faculty who may not want to do administrative work, but we ask them to do it. And part of what we have to do is to figure out how do we help our most talented faculty be back in the classroom full time and ensure that that's occurring, and at the same time ensure that we have people to carry on the work of the institution. I would disagree with the premise of the statement that we have too many, but maybe what we have not done is explain the need for the administrators we have hired. And I'm very happy to do that. And Sarah, if you can remind me as a follow-up to this, I'll go back and look at the number of administrators we have now versus the number of administrators we've had probably in the last 10 years. And I would venture to wage that number, if it has increased 1% or 2%, it probably has not increased that much. And I don't know if you know that off the top of your head, do you? No. So we'll find that out, because I would agree with you. You never want to have more people managing an institution than you actually have people working within the institution. You never want to have that. But there's a lot of work that I think administrators want faculty to understand the work that administrators do, as well as faculty want administrators to understand the work that they do. And I'd rather start from that place of saying, okay, we are creating X position, why are we doing that? Have people contribute to a robust conversation about why we're doing it, and if we do. I'm trying to think, since I've been here in 2 years, I've created one senior vice president for student services. That was actually a vacated administrative position that I elevated up. I created a director of compliance, but we actually transferred that administrative position from IT into a new position. Somebody help me. Have I created some other ones? Y'all know. Y'all keeping track better than I am. Anybody know? ACES will be one that we're going to create, which is going to be the director of the program that's going to help transition to K-12. And I think that that's a high priority for the organization as we look at the ways in which we're bringing folks from K-12 into higher education. But I haven't done that, so one of the parts that's very interesting is to actually look at the numbers, because I think there's this perception that we move people around, or we move people, all of a sudden there's just been this extra large number. Now, that being said, will there be other administrative positions hired? Yes. I know that, and I'm just going to, as I look at you, academic redesign, they're spending time looking at that. Will they make recommendations for additional administrative hires? Probably so. I don't know that, haven't met with the group, but I suspect. Will they also, conversely, at some point make recommendations as we look at the ratio of our full-time to part-time faculty? Yes, we need to have that conversation. Should we be hiring, as you suggest, more part-time faculty to increase our enrollment and to increase capacity? Certainly. We had been on such a plateau in hiring where we actually stopped hiring or dropped positions that we actually need to start getting back up. I met with a group of union leaders, the presidents of the unions yesterday, and one of the things we started talking about was creativity. And one of the things that I think Liz Brandenburg was sitting next to me, she said, you know, we've had this issue where a number of our employees just have taken on more and more work, and they haven't had the opportunity for the creative energy that typically happens when you have a little bit more time to do something. And I think we have to figure out how to do that work and to have that serious conversation. But as a follow-up, I will make sure that we look at those numbers and help really get the information out about how and why we do certain positions if we do them. And I appreciate you asking the question. Thank you. Yes, sir.
All right, we're going to an online question now. This is from W. Dean Schleicher.
Okay.
And speaking of numbers, as Montgomery College's popularity rises, enrollment increases every year. Has the college made any accommodations to handle the increased student population?
We've done actually quite a bit in that, and that's an excellent question. We looked at our enrollment. Right now, we are up about 1.8% college-wide. That varies at Germantown, which is probably up, I think, 8%, 5% at Tacoma Park, 1.some% here at Rockville, and about 8%, I believe, in distance education. So we're going to continue to see variations in that based on capacity. Rockville is just no more space to probably put more people. Germantown clearly has the most amount of space because they are not landlocked and are building new buildings there. The area where I suggest we're going to see a lot more growth, distance education. We will continue to see students who are going to expect and demand support and services through online education, so we'll have to do that. We've done some very interesting things in that regard. One is that we're going to be going through the one college hiring process, and we're going to be redirecting positions to areas where we've had growth. So just as some people are retiring, is it back on? No? Okay. Just as some people are retiring, we're going to have a systematic conversation about where we need those positions to be. That's a very exciting thing, I think. The other thing we're going to be doing, which is actually a result of the SOS group, at the start of the semester when we have a huge influx of people coming to our campuses, we're actually sending out folks who are less impacted into the college campuses to help support those areas, to help transition. We have those huge numbers of people coming on campus at that time. The last thing I think we're doing is we're looking at how to be more efficient in terms of how we distribute people throughout the day. And that's something I was talking to one of the provosts who's saying, well, I'm looking at, we're seeing a growth in evening classes. So how do we look at putting people there to support evening students versus when we're looking at students who are here during the day? So I think we have a series of strategies we're using. Here's the caution, though. You never want to create a system that is so responsive that you're unable to contract when the natural contraction occurs. So I say this because we are one of 2 or 3, I believe, community colleges in the state that actually has an upward enrollment. Everyone else is starting to see the decline. So we all knew this in terms of the economy, right? The economy is starting to get better. Here's our canary, right? Economy is getting better. Folks are going back to work. Fewer people are enrolling in higher education. So I would venture to wage, we'll be doing good if we keep where we are for the next couple of years, but we're going to see a decline. So we don't want to staff up so much that when we need to start actually decreasing our staff, that we don't have the ability to do that because our enrollments have gone down. So we want to be very thoughtful about that. There's a whole talent management process that goes to it, but I appreciate the question. I hope we're doing a good job in responding to some of those needs.
Well, here's a good follow-up, and you mentioned Liz Brandenburg earlier, and she's the one with the follow-up. Could you discuss the 4th campus options, White Oak, and where you are with ideas and directions considered by the BOT? There are some employees that feel the timing is bad for this purchase and required manpower to support it. Since there have been no raises in 3 to 4 years, and operationally we would be more financially strapped, how can we manage this? Could you please expand on this?
Well, thank you, Liz, for that question. And actually, Liz gave me a heads up that she was sending that question in. So I thank you all who do that from time to time. Let's be very clear. The board has made no decisions about acquiring this property yet. And in fact, what we try to do is to be very transparent and let you know we've been thinking about this. I literally got a call. Hey, Darian, how you doing? Did you know that the National Labor College is for sale? What is the National Labor College? Would you tell me? Oh, it is. It's great. You've never been to the National Labor College? No, I've never been to it. You must come and see the National Labor College. So I took a walk with our council member, Valerie Irvin, and she and I literally walked the entire campus one Friday afternoon. And as we're walking, I started thinking, they've got a conference center here. This is kind of interesting. We could do some things here. That way, when we get our conference center at Germantown, we have one on each end of the county. We might be able to really have a synergy that will be very powerful. Oh, they've got residents. We could do something. I wonder, could we do something with residents? That's kind of interesting. They've got some interesting spaces here. This is 42 acres of land in Montgomery County, in the south end of the county. Does this exist anyplace else? No, it does not. So we get done having that conversation, and Ms. Irvin says, well, I think we should bring more people out to talk about this. Let's bring more people out, Ms. Irvin. So I brought out our executive officers of our board. We invited our county executive to walk it with us. And at the end, he walked the campus with us, and we went through that dreaming process again. And we started talking about, could the college do this? And one of the things was interesting, one of the folks who was with us, there's always been a request for the college to have a presence in that end, that's a part of the county. And we have not done that directly. We've done it in probably a few places we've offered classes. To actually have a presence in that part of the county became apparent. So at that point, we heard that there was an inquiry by a news media that was planning to publish an article that the college is interested in why? I'm like, dude. So I think I was actually in India at the time, and I get an email from Steve and Kathy, Dr. P, here's something we need you to know. And I said, well, let's put something out to the college community, and they put it out so the college community, one, would hear it from us, not hear it from the news media. That's the first thing. So second, going to a question, the board right now has asked us to do a lot of due diligence. There are a series of questions they have about what would be an educational purpose for this? What are the facilities issues that are involved? What are the parking issues that could be there? All those different types of things. But here's the key to this. They've asked us to look at this both short-term and long-term. So if we were to eventually acquire this space, if we could somehow do this, and mind you, this would have to be a cooperation between the state and the county, because we get our capital dollars from the state and the county. From time to time, our foundation has come in and helped us do that, but we wouldn't do that right now. It would either be the county and the state coming in, or, here's this other thing, a public-private partnership where somebody can come in and we can look at an entrepreneurial opportunity for us as an organization. But if we were to do this, it would take years to develop that property. We would not come in, hire it, start it, and then say, oh, let's put 30 grounds people there, 24 facilities people there, 15 administrators. We wouldn't do that. Now, watch, I know it's going to be the rumor when we leave here. They're putting 15 administrators at the National Labor College. But the point about that is it takes time to build, and that would be a part of our long-term planning, part of our strategic goals. We have, as an organization, already articulated this as a part of our strategic plan, looking at having more significant presence within the county physically, but also looking at entrepreneurial opportunities. So I'm very well aware of the fact, and I thank Liz for the fact that we have not had raises here in a number of years. We're working diligently this year with the board and the various negotiating teams to look at those issues. But what's important is that this is a long-term issue. It's not a short-term buy. It's not saying, and if we even get it, y'all, let me say if this happens, it would need to be a long-term development process that would occur. Probably not like some of our campuses when they started, true? I bet Germantown now at 8,000 some odd students did not start off that way. And how long did it take them to get that way? When did Germantown campus start? Anybody know? 1975. Enough said? All right, thank you.
Judy Ackerman, Vice President and Provost of the Rockville campus. Welcome to our campus.
Thank you.
Fun question. You talked about maybe seeing purple buses going up and down around the county, and you've also spoken about Montgomery County being Montgomery College's college town. Mm-hmm. What else would be different if it were?
Oh, you know, the essence, and I actually looked this up the other day. There was a great piece that was in the Chronicle of Higher Ed. This is, again, me and my boring self on a Friday night. And there was a blog piece that actually had a descriptor of the top 10 college towns in the country. And then at the end of that, they actually started defining what a college town is. So going to your question, what I loved about the definition, it talked about the fact that anything that happened in that town was deeply connected to the college. And they talked about the economic development plan for that area, the workforce development plan, the cultural life, the political life, the intellectual life of a community. All of that was deeply connected to the college. And I remain convinced that I want to live in a college town. And this struck me. It was actually, we had a former employee here at the college, not too long after I got here, came to see me and was deeply, he didn't want to tell me that he was leaving. And I was like, what? You leaving me? And I was, did I do something? What happened? He said, it's not about you. He said, I got a great opportunity to move with my family to this place. But it was, and he said, and I'm moving because it's a college town. I really want to raise my children in a college town. And I thought, how cool is that? And what's interesting about that, we all think about the best college towns that we've worked and lived in. It's this idea that everything that happens in that county or that town is deeply connected to the college. And the college is the major think tank. It's the place where people get their life, their social, their recreational part. I would love to figure out how to make Montgomery County a college town, of which we are the owner of that. And I don't think that's lofty. And the first time I said, I remember a couple people said, that ain't going to happen. You got Georgetown down here. You got College Park over here. You got this. I said, but they not Montgomery College. And they're not in Montgomery County, right? So we need to be figuring out how to claim it and own it. You know, reach up and grab it. That's what I say. Thank you, Judy.
Here's another online question from Julie Foster.
Okay.
She starts with a brief statement. With over 100 employees participating in VERP over the next 2 years, MC will change drastically. Question: how can those of us that remain be assured that we will not be expected to once again pick up the slack? What about the vacant positions, and will managers and the employees retiring be held accountable for the transitions?
So if I start from the bottom up, that would be yes. Managers and administrators will be responsible for those transitions. But I would also say that the employees who are transitioning out are also responsible for that. As a part of the VERP, as I like to call it, we have several components to that. One is that this is a non-terminable agreement between the employee and the college about their designation that they are taking this, taking the retirement plan. But in addition to that, they have to do a knowledge transfer agreement between that employee and the institution that is developed in concert with their manager. And what's very important about that, the manager then has the responsibility to make sure that they get the most amount of information that they need from that employee for the person who may or may replace that position, or for the office to assume to think about how that work is going to be done to have that discussion. Now, will there be places where we would not be replacing certain positions? Could possibly happen. That's going to be a conversation with the manager of that area, working with their representative administrative supervisor to have that. But that fits into the other part that I talked about momentarily, the one college hiring process, true? So we're looking at, if we have 5 presidents, do we actually need to continue having 5 presidents? That's facetious, I know. But the idea is, do we need to have 5 presidents? And do we need to have 5 presidents that all are at the Rockville campus? Or do we need to have 5 presidents and one could be over here, and one could be over here, and one could be over here? So the conversations are think about how we utilize position, how do we use talent? That to me is a very important part. And what are the talent needs as we think about community colleges of the next century? Will there be some overlap? Yes. There would be some overlap. There might be, say, okay, this person is left. By the time we make a decision about how we're going to fill it, I'm going to be honest, is that fair for me to say? There's going to be some overlap. There might be some temp people that are going to come in and help us do that work. But I remain convinced that the intent of this is not to have, Julie, and I say this to you because I know you well, is not to have one person start to do 2 or 3 jobs. That is not the intent at all. We're going to go through a systematic process of having those conversations. They're already occurring. And the other part about this is that I hope at the end of this we leave a stronger organization, because all 106 people are not leaving at the same time. They're leaving over the next 2 years. So we have some time to plan for a lot of those positions as they vacate, because that's one of the other intents of this. We can plan for this now and know that we have this talent that's leaving. How do we celebrate this person who's given so much to our organization, who's choosing to enjoy retirement and wish that we all could go with them? But the other part of it is that how do we then prepare the organization for this knowledge loss that happens? We were just talking about this morning, and one of the things I said, I'm not expecting a 15-page knowledge transfer. I think there's a form, and they have some appendices maybe you put to it. But I always think about this. Think about something here at the college that you always know that you call Dawn Drew for. Just think, what is it that she has in her head on X topic that we know we need to capture? Those are the essential elements, because if Dawn were retired and wasn't there, she's not, but if she's retiring, we would say, what do we need from Dawn to have that information? Susan, if you were retiring, she's not. Susan, what is the essential components that that are about her work that if she were not here, no one else would be able to answer that? That's what we're trying to capture in those knowledge transfers, and more importantly, ensure that multiple people have access to that information. So that's what we're trying to do with that. Will there be a little messiness in here? Have no doubt to it. Do I think that there'll be some opportunities where there'll be some overlap? Yes, but it will be short term, and we're not asking people to work out of class, to work out of their job specs. I'm trying to remember all the ones from the classification study. We want people to stay focused on the work they're doing, and we're going to help as an organization to figure out how to get the work done. Thank you.
Dr. Pollard, Kathy Jones, Senior Vice President, Finance and Administration.
Who you? No.
Really. I heard you speak to Montgomery College as a college town, but I know that we've done outreach initiatives to China, Ethiopia, and, India and Ethiopia, and you continue to get interest from other countries. Could you speak to your vision and what it is you would like to see from these international global outreaches?
You know, I appreciate that because I'm sure there's some folks wondering around why are we doing all this stuff other places? We are Montgomery College, we're Montgomery County, we are a county-driven institution in the state of Maryland. Why are we having conversations with these other folks? One of the things that for me is very interesting, and the board articulated this in its priorities for this year, but also in the strategic plan. They want us to figure out how to be far more entrepreneurial as an institution. How can we start to reduce our dependency on public support? So part of the work that we've been doing, and mind you, this India initiative predates me. If y'all remember, the college actually started this several years ago where it was relationship building. It was understanding culture, understanding context, understanding infrastructure. And now, here's the part that I think is amazing. We often think about four-year colleges as places that produce scholarship, right? They produce the knowledge. And two-year colleges, we're the place where the knowledge is taught. We aren't doing research and development. But I was talking to a friend of mine who tends to be a little bit of elitist from time to time, and we got into one of our usual sparring matches. And in that sparring, I happened to remind him that we have a competency of our own. We have an intellectual property that people are interested in. He was like, what do you mean by that? I said, there are countries across this globe that are wanting to start a community college system. They are actually they recognize that the only way to build a true middle class in their country is to start a community college system. There are countries across the globe that are asking community colleges to come in and help them start this. So I'm not I never took a business class in my life, but I think there's a business opportunity right there. Why do I have to give away my intellectual property? Why do I have to give away my competency? Why can I certainly share it with you, but also do it in a way that has some cost recovery benefits for the organization? Now, maybe I'm going to take a business class because that interests me greatly, and that's the purpose of these types of conversations that we're having, particularly with India. Mind you also, all of that travel that we've done, at least since I've been here, has been subsidized by a grant that we received from the State Department because they said this is a national security issue. Hadn't thought about it that way, huh? That's a good one. So therefore, we're going to pay people to go out and start doing this work because we need that economy to be successful. I think President Obama said the most important relationship that we will have globally in the next century is the one with India. Here's a population that has the youngest population in the world, the most number of people, and the most who do not have access to higher education. So if we thought the Arab Spring was something, think about what can happen in a country that does not have access to higher education and does not create the ability for upward mobility by many people in that as quickly as they can to build and develop an underdeveloped country. These are the types of things of why. The other thing for me, our mission demands it. We tout all the time, sometimes it's 160, sometimes 170. The other day I heard it was 180 countries we have represented at Montgomery College. I think there's an obligation that we have at some level to ensure that while we're receiving and doing great work and bringing phenomenal people and helping to educate them, that we also have the opportunity to help the countries that to send us these students also grow and thrive as well. And if we can use our competency, our intellectual property to do that and to take it and have it be a financial benefit for the institution, I think that that's a good one as well. And if it's also a relationship building. The global economy, and we all know this, there are very few jobs in the future where you would not have to have some global competence. If we can figure out exchange programs for our students, community college students are underrepresented in exchange programs nationally. Our faculty and staff, that to me is huge. So those are the types of reasons why I think it's so important to do this type of work. And I always welcome and thank you for the question because, as you can see, I have no problem pontificating on it. Did you see you didn't do that yet?
I'm going to take another question here. with the national election just a couple of weeks away, I'd like to know your thoughts on student involvement in elections, and particularly this election.
Yeah, you know, one of my earliest memories as a child is going with my father to the election booth. And we lived on 7825 South Wood Street in Chicago. And at the end of in Chicago, even though about the streets, you go to the end of the corner, there's an alley, and then there was a little church on the other side of the alley before you got to 79th, which is the main corridor. And this is where the neighborhood went for voting. So but it was so small in there that my sister and I had to stand outside while we went to vote, right? So my dad, he said, you stay right here. I'm gonna go in here and vote, and I'll be right back. Cause this is me. Okay, Daddy. He go in and vote. We come back. So you know, I grew up in Chicago. I knew about elections before I knew how to do anything. So I said, Daddy, who you vote for? And my father said, I'm not telling you that. That's my private right as a citizen. And I remember to this day him telling me this. I said, you're private, but I'm your kid. You know, I just want to know who you voted for, right? And he would say, that's my private right as a citizen. He said, when you are able to vote, you can go in there and you will be able to make that decision. He said, that's the only one of the few privacies you have in this country. And I was like so struck by that. So for me, I grew up talking about elections all the time. And it troubles me when we have people who are apathetic. And I said, if you don't vote, you have lost your right to complain for the next X number of years. So don't talk to me. If I don't see an I voted sticker on you someplace, then don't talk to me about national policy. Don't talk to me about your Social Security. Don't talk to me about your health care. Don't talk to me about your wars. Don't talk to me about your economic development, because guess what? You could have stood up and had a voice. Now, if your voice loses, then you still get the right to complain, right? But you still have to be able to say, I stood up and I made a decision. So, and this is what I tell young people. I'm so happy to see some of our young people in the room, our young students, because the reality about this is that they will be the generation most impacted by these decisions. So if they are not out there voting, we need to be doing everything we can to ensure that they get out to vote and make sure that they're informed voters. That's an important part to me, because oftentimes, well, there's a lot of people with a whole lot of book sense, but not a whole lot of common sense. So we need to have a whole conversation about being an informed voter when you go into a booth and understand what that. So the League of Women Voters, I got their information booklet sending me. The thing came in the mail the other day to tell me what the ballot's going to look like. And, we study. But here's the thing I love. I'm talking to my son about this now at 5. So he knows. He said, Mama, when are we going to go vote? I have a picture of him when we went to vote at 2 when we were in California. And he thought this was the best thing. He said, Mama, when are we going to vote? He said, well, I'm going to vote. He said, I'm going to vote for X candidate. I said, well, he said, well, who are you going to vote for? I said, baby, you don't get to vote. You can just go with Mama to vote. But, tonight he came. He said, Mama, the debate is going to be on. And but this is the discourse of our family, right? He said, Mama, the debate is going to be on. He said, do you think he's going to sit there and just do this the whole time again? Now that's my, because you know what? He sat at the dinner table the next week and heard his family having that conversation, right? So there's part of us is our agency of helping our students know that they need to be out there voting, our employees knowing they need to be out there voting, because y'all know I got a lot to say. And after election day, I'm going to be talking even more, because I'm going to vote, because I will have earned my right to vote and earned my right to talk. All right, it's on you again. I'm sorry, I got a little wound up again, didn't I?
All right, we have about 20 minutes or so left. We have another online question. This one is, with the launching of the college's new MCPS, MC, USG, ACES, ACES partnership.
That was a lot of alphabets.
Boy, how does the college plan to further strengthen our K through 12 and university relationships?
Yeah, let me start back into that one way. I had somebody send me an email and say, well, what's the benefit to the college for this program? Why are we doing it? And I was kind of struck by that, because I suggested to them, and I said, if we have students who come to us who are better prepared, and they come from families who help them understand the pathway to college more effectively, won't that benefit us? Because maybe we won't have to teach as many developmental courses. Maybe we can put resources in some other areas of the institution. So for me, I see this particular program as an investment in helping to get a better prepared student in a community that is significantly changing. So one of the things that's exciting is that while I started the organization, this is my 3rd year now, we have a superintendent who just finished his 1st year. So he and I have come in together, and while we have lots of good conversations, one of the ones that we're most passionate about is ensuring that we have a well-educated populace in Montgomery County. So we are spending time talking about how do we look at the relationship between our two organizations? How do we strengthen the ties? You know, we are right across the street from MCPS, and some days I feel that we are miles apart, and that is conceptually and pragmatically. So how do we start to look at a more robust relationship? How do we empower the people who are in the ground level making those conversations and relationships feel empowered to do that work? How do we sit down and say, oh, well, you know, Dr. such and such said to do it this way, and Dr. such and such said we wouldn't do it this way. You know what? It ain't about Dr. Pollard and really Dr. Starr at the end of the day. It's about the people who are doing the work, having those conversations, and figuring out what do our students need. That's really what it is. What do our students need, and how can we get out of the way and let them thrive? And that, to me, is the work that we're having to do. So we're going to be looking at more tight coupling between our two organizations, easing pathways, more clearly defining what the expectations are. I had a high school teacher tell me, you know, our students do very well. They complete, you know, take tests, and then they come over here, and then you all say they have to go into developmental. And the first thing out of my mind, this was when I was in Illinois, I said, well, we need to get college faculty talking to the high school faculty so that they'll know what our expectations are. And actually, it was a group of folks who were working on this last year. I thought, what does it mean to be college ready? I think that should be a statement that we should have in the front of our catalog. In order to be college ready, a student should be able to do these things. So they know the expectations up front about what it means that you should be able to compute this way, read this level, write this way, think this way. All the things we do on that assessment test, we need to be able to articulate it to students in a way. And I think we do that in some you can piece it together in different parts, but a statement. This is what it means to be college ready. And if you're not college ready, here are the phenomenal support services and courses we have to help you be successful. That's what we're getting to. And I think those are very authentic conversations. There's a great gospel song that I love, but the pastor, he starts off and saying, it's time to move beyond the veil. And I was so struck by that. So I had to go and actually research. I had a minor in religious studies. So I spent a lot of time, what is the biblical meaning of moving beyond the veil? And it was this idea that you would initially go into the temple for worship, and in a temple, and then you would stop there, you'd go behind the veil, and then the men of God could go and have the authentic prayer, right? And they were the ones who had access to God. And I kept thinking, so authentic conversation, in the song he says, let's move beyond the veil. And I thought that's what I want to start to have these relationships with our K-12 system, with all these other, moving into authentic conversations, not getting caught up in my territory, your territory, but having substantive conversations that mean something for students. I have very little interest now in just talking for the heck of it.
Our next question is a rather lengthy one from Dr. Paul Lux.
Okay.
Are you aware that by removing credit for AELP classes, you are creating a second-class faculty at MC? As a follow-up, are you aware that by this same action, you are making second language speakers of English second-class MC students? Since their significant accomplishments in their second language, English, are not valued as much as the smaller accomplishments of MC students in other second languages, such as Spanish and French. Isn't this policy ethnocentric at heart?
That's a powerful question. I don't know if I agree with the premise of several parts of it. So let me see if I can start with the first one. One is that we already have faculty within the institution who teach credit and non-credit courses. And I would argue any day of the week that they're not second-class faculty. And any assumption that is something that we need to check ourselves about. Secondly, we have not said that these faculty will not still be instructional faculty having all the rights and benefits of any full-time faculty member. What we have said is that these sets of courses are courses that will no longer be granted a special categorization that we had here called institutional credit. Now, to inform folks, because I think this is a very powerful question, this wasn't something that we just thought up and said, oh, let's address this right now. There were a group of students who came to us and expressed some concern about this and said, we are being adversely affected because we are taking courses in a discipline that have a negative impact on our GPA, yet and still we cannot transfer them to another institution because of our institutional credit problem. The other thing that these students went out and did is that they started researching in their statements that they are unfamiliar with any other community college in the state of Maryland that did that. And they were adversely affected. So guess what had to happen at that point? These students came to us very seriously making their concerns known and said that while some students may benefit from this, we're being adversely affected by it significantly. And we asked the faculty of that program to go and do some research. They did some research. Our then Chief Academic Officer, Ms. Pollard, did some research. And then and now let me say this to him here, unfortunately, we carried this over to Dr. Pearl. So in his first, how many months you been here now, Don?
Almost 7.
Almost 7. And his first week on the job, I presented him and said, here's the issue you're going to have to deal with, and here's why you have to deal with it. And he said to me, to his credit, do you have an answer already for this? I said, well, I have some theories. I said, but I don't have the answer. He said, well, let me go back and do some work on this and come back. And he actually went out and did his own research. He talked with the faculty group. He met with them and listened, and he came back and offered the recommendation. He said, what do you think about that? I said, that's kind of how I was thinking. I hadn't told you that, but that's how I was thinking. So what's powerful about this moment in the question, can I have the question? I want to make sure I address all the parts.
I'm sorry, I put it
That's
back
okay.
here.
I don't believe that we're creating a second-tier faculty, a second class of faculty. We don't have a caste system here. We have 2 groups of faculty at this institution. We have full-time faculty and we have part-time faculty. And if I really argue, we have 1 faculty, but for collective bargaining purposes, we have 2. All right? So that's the first part of the question. So are you aware? I don't agree with the supposition in the question. Secondly, as a follow-up, are you aware that the same action you're making second language speakers, that we're not valuing them and their accomplishments? I would argue that that's, again, a supposition I disagree with because the students themselves came to us and expressed their concern about the adverse effect this was having on them. I would tell you as well, then, is this policy ethnocentric at heart? Again, the concluding question in that I don't agree with as well. Do I agree with the fact that this is a difficult conversation for the college? Yes. Will I agree that the AELP faculty will have their concerns addressed, understanding how this decision was made? Yes. Have they been engaged in conversation with the dean and the senior vice president on this issue? Yes. Will they be satisfied as a group with this? Maybe not for some time. Is it in the best interest of students? I would argue that it is. And fortunately and unfortunately, that's the job that I have to respond to. Students who say to me, I'm adversely affected, will you look at this issue? We spent time looking at it. We looked at best practices. We had substantive conversation. We're not changing the curriculum. We're not changing how it's taught, the pedagogy that's used. That is within the domain of the faculty. But the college at this point is making a decision that we would no longer offer a concept of institutional credit because institutionally it was adversely affecting students upon transfer. And that's something I couldn't have happen. I appreciate Dr. Lux's question. I understand the spirit and intent behind it. I disagree with it, but that's one of the beautiful parts about being an academic organization. We can have civil discourse and have intellectual debate in ways I think that are substantive. Thank you.
Okay, before I go to our next online question, anybody in here have a question? Okay. All right, with the Germantown expansion project underway, can you give us an update on when the new Holy Cross Hospital will be built and ready for use? In what ways will that hospital impact how we teach our students within our nursing program? And how will our general population students be affected?
My understanding is that the hospital, every time I go past, I keep seeing the cranes, going back and forth, putting the steel up. I believe they're scheduled to open in 2014. I don't have that in front of me. Is that correct? 2014? So the hospital is scheduled to open in 2014, and we're very excited about that. As we've stated in multiple places, the hospital has no impact on our curriculum in our program. The hospital is its own freestanding entity that is leasing space to us. Leasing space from us. Our institution will benefit, though, from having them there because there will be more spaces for our nursing students to go and do their practicum. Right now, our nursing students are fanned out all across this county, PG County, and also the District of Columbia, if I'm correct. So this provides an opportunity for more spaces for our students to go in and do practicums and to do their teaching experience there. Our general population students, I think, will also benefit from it because as we're creating more specialized programs, healthcare diagnostics or medical, I can't remember all the names of the programs that they're creating up there, they will have, again, more spaces to go and do the practice for the work and the education that occurs there. So I do believe that we have a unique opportunity to, one, be the first community college in the country that has its own life sciences park, but also to have a college as its primary tenant there because there can be some very natural synergies that could occur there. I know there's some of our nursing faculty that go in the summer and actually go and work in a hospital to keep their clinical skills at a level that they feel very comfortable with. So that might be an opportunity particularly for our faculty who live in Up County to not have to go down county to do that type of work. I have a sitter who works with us, my family, and she's a nursing student. She lives in Clarksburg, and she takes her general education courses at Germantown, and when she transfers into the nursing program, I said she's a wannabe nursing student. She will be taking courses, her didactics at the Germantown campus, but wouldn't it be kind of nice for her that she'll be able to do her nursing practicum and rotations at the new hospital if she is one of the students successful in that program? I think that's pretty awesome. Any questions in the room?
Well, we have
Nancy got one over here.
Ah, okay.
We got more online coming in.
Nancy Newell, Director of Grants, and Dr. Pollard, I'd like to ask you about our new participatory governance system. As you know, it's busily underway, beginning its groundbreaking implementation of this new governance model. How will you know when it's been a success? What is the indicator?
I love Nancy. She is just, well, besides being a sweetheart, she asks great questions. For me, it's going to be see a greater engagement by the college community, both in terms of how we measure engagement. We know we're right now in the midst of our annual survey of our employees and employee engagement. You like how I work that in? So we need, that's going to be, I think, one, we'll start to see that. I've always maintained at our organization, while we may have some communication challenges, our communication is not really our issue, it's been participation. We've had a governance system that was very localized to a very small group of people, and that group of people had a huge responsibility to try to get a lot of information out and get information back. And also, not all the information, there wasn't capacity for everything to come into the system that probably needed to come into it. What I'm excited about our new governance structure is that we have created a series of councils that allow people to get engaged. We have over 157 people actively engaged in governance. I mean, that's huge. Is it still trying to figure out how it's going to work over the next couple? Have no doubt about that. But said our college council chair sitting right here in front of me. So we know that's going to be messy, but the beautiful part about there's beauty in the mess. Because that's a part of the journey, and we have to honor that. Everything's not perfect the first time it comes out, and you get to that end, then you'll know. The other way that we're going to know whether, and for me, it's successful, we're going to actually be assessing the system. We designed, the task force on governance, when they put this together, I believe they have a 3-point governance assessment coming. One, they're asking the college community to assess it. They're asking the members of the councils themselves to assess their work, and they're also asking them to look at work plans that they're developing now for the year to see if they accomplish what they said they were going to accomplish. This is as this system continues to mature, we're going to see lots and lots of things come out of it. But for me, if people start to describe a greater engagement, if I start to hear less, there's a communication problem, and start hearing more like, well, you didn't bring that to governors, Dr. Pollard. How'd you make that decision? I take that as a good sign because people are valuing the governance system. And third, the assessments that we do at the end of the first year and revising the system for next year is going to be the way I look at it. Thank you.
Okay, we probably have time for maybe one more question. This is a long question, so I'm going to edit it down so we have time to hear your answer. Last week I was sad to read Dr. Pearl's email that we are no longer going to have the Gateway to College program. Some of my most brilliant students I have had in my English classes were at MC because of that program. I understand that sometimes difficult decisions have to be made, but since this is a program that directly impacts students, I thought it would be one of our priorities. Could you explain in more detail why this program is discontinued?
I'll try. This actually is probably a best conversation to have with Dr. Pearl because he and a group of folks spent a lot of time analyzing the data of the program. But let me suffice it to say, there's an interesting line in that email where I believe the person said difficult decisions have to be made. And I heard a lecturer several years ago in higher ed say to me that higher education, we excel in the art of addition and we do not practice the art of subtraction very well. So we do very good. You like that, Judy? The whole arithmetic? Thank you, good math. We are very good at taking on more things and adding to it, but we have never, very seldom, figure out what things we need to stop doing. Because whether it be because of resources, whether it be because of outcomes, whether it be because of changes in legislation, we decide we're going to keep doing something without having the substantive conversation. I completely agree with the person who wrote that. I've attended the graduations of those programs. I've worked with some of the students. They are phenomenal. This is not a statement about that. What it is a statement about is about resources. It's also a statement in changing legislation, and that's an important point that should not be lost here. When the compulsory age for high school moves from 15 to 17, there's a very different reality. Is that the only reason why this was done? No. We have to look at outcomes of the program. We have to look at the enrollment. We have to look at the costs. All of those things factor into a cost-benefit analysis. At some point, we say we can't continue. The students, though, who are in the program, we're going to complete our obligation to them and our commitment to them and succeed at that. The employees, we're working to find different roles for them within the organization. But I would go back to the wonderful premise that was in the statement. There are times when you have to make difficult decisions, and that was one of the difficult ones we had to make.
Okay, I think we have time for one quick question and one quick response.
3 minutes.
With our ACES partnership, in what ways will the college benefit from that investment?
Better prepared students, greater informed parents, and a community I think that we are connecting more deeply to because the demography is changing.
And Dr. Pollard, we have time for your closing comments.
Well, as always, I have to say thank you. It's always amazing to me that folks actually want to hear me talk, but more importantly, that they have concerns. They're deeply invested in the institution. I thank you all for coming. I saw a lot of you walking. I thank for our audience online who are watching, those who will see it over the course of the week. I thank the courage of the questions because sometimes we know that they are difficult questions. We know that sometimes they may be unpopular questions, and I thank each of you for asking them. Thank you for holding me accountable. Thank you for holding yourselves accountable. That's the other part about this, a dialogic relationship, true? And most of all, I look forward to seeing y'all next month, all right? Have a good one.
Well, thank you, Dr. Pollard, and also thank you to all of you here in the room and online for participating in today's town hall meeting. Now, our next town hall meeting is going to be Tuesday, November 13th. It'll be up at the Gaithersburg Business Training Center. So keep an eye on Inside MC Online for all the details on that. And you can also follow us at new.livestream.com/Montgomery College Live for all the details and information on Montgomery College's live web events. So once again, for Dr. Pollard and all of us at Montgomery College Television, thanks a lot for participating in today's town hall meeting.